works here. It doesn't matter. Welcome to those of you here. Welcome to those of you online. Glad to see you all this morning. I think we have just one newcomer in the house at least. Barbara, maybe you could grab one of those gift bags back there. Glad to have you with us today. Make yourself at home. And anyone else here for the first time today that I didn't have a chance to say hello to? All the rest of us old timers. You all know the ropes. There's masks, of course, and sanitizer, things like that on the back table. If you want to, at any time, claim one of those, claim something back there. We have a Joys and Concerns table where sometimes it's nice to just light a candle for a prayer, that you're holding in your heart or mind. Just to do that at any time during your visit with us this morning. That's what it's there for. And we're so delighted to have, as musicians today, Laura Adair and Michael Contras today. Let's welcome them. Really look forward to hearing those songs in just a moment. So as always, we begin with prayer, and I invite you to think of what prayers you might have in your mind, on your heart. We receive them at all times on our website, that prayer request tab, unitydelawareohio.org. So anyone out there, send those in anytime. We're here to hold each other in prayer. That's probably the most important thing we do for one another as a community. So Laura is going to guide us into prayer with a beautiful Karen Drucker chant called All Is Well. To close our eyes and become very centered and still, very aware of that life within us that is always flowing through us, with that renewing life of God. As we breathe in and out, we feel that energy flowing through us. We remember that it comes from deep within, from Source. It's always with us, always renewing us, strengthening us, steadying us, like a wellspring of peace we can draw from deep within, a wellspring of renewing life energy, always ready to flow through us in fullness. We affirm this truth for ourselves, for everyone in our community this morning, and for living beings everywhere. There is not one that is separate from the living God. Remember this for one another. We are deeply connected, every one of us. As we hold these high thoughts of God's power within us, affirming this truth for ourselves, we know it for each other. We know it for each other just as deeply, just as well. There is no separation in the realm of spirit. There is no separation between us, among us, between us and God. We are one with the living God. As we know that truth, we affirm
reaffirm our commitment to remember that through the days ahead, to remember that we are always connected in spirit, that we are all being guided by that presence, that intelligence within us. We are all being led in the path of life and peace and well-being. And how grateful we are. We are one with God, and all is well. And so it is. Amen. All right. Laura's going to do a beautiful song for us. I haven't heard it in a long time, by Beth Nielsen Chapman, called How We Love.
Life has taught me this. Every day is new. And if anything is true, all that matters when we're through is how we love. Faced with what we lack, some things fall apart. From the ashes, new dreams start. All that matters to the heart is how we love. How we love, how we love, from the smallest act of kindness, in a word, a smile, a touch. In spite of our mistakes, chances come again. If we lose or if we win, all that matters in the end is how we love. How we love, how we love. I will not forget your kindness when I needed it so much. Sometimes we forget, try to be so strong in a world of right and wrong. All that matters when we're gone, all that mattered all along, all we have that carries on is how we
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Michael. Isn't that a beautiful song? I love that song. All right, welcome. Good to see everyone this morning. Well, I was going to be talking about trees and forests today a little bit. So my topic is called An Entwined Place. So I was looking for forestry jokes, tree jokes, things like that, and found some, really they're kind of riddles, and they're like kids' riddles. But I like kids' jokes myself, so here's a nice easy one you'll all get. How do trees access the internet? They log in. And there's another one that's going to come in.
We're not doing as good as the kids, are we?
What did the tree wear to the pool party? Swimming trunks. Exactly. Exactly. Right. And here's another one that you'll get this one. Why are trees great at networking? They're always branching out. Yeah, always branching out. I don't think you'll get this one. What does the Jedi warrior say after he plants trees?
Bonsai.
No, but a good job. Good guess. May the forest be with you.
Good.
Finally, I thought this is a good one, and it really kind of leads into the message today. What do trees use to send emergency messages in the forest? Morse code. That's good, huh? Well, it kind of leads into things a little bit because I've been reading a book by a writer by the name of Suzanne Simard. It's called Finding the Mother Tree. And she's a forest ecologist, so I've been learning a whole lot about forests. They're so much more intricate and interwoven than we have realized down through the years. And I'm sure some of you have been catching some of this research bubbling up in different places now. It's not what we've been taught over the years, trees as individual things competing for resources. Forests are interwoven, and maybe not so much by moss, but by these fungal networks that weave through the forest floors. And we might see just the tips of them here and there, but underneath the surface, they penetrate. All the trees are connected by these vast mycelial networks underground, and they're teaching us new things about what kind of system, what kind of community makes for the best flourishing of all its members. It's not what so many of us have been taught, which is about competitive, competition for resources, survival of the fittest, the toughest, the most aggressive, gets the resources and grows the best. No. It's all about cooperation and mutuality and collaboration. That's what the forests are teaching us. It's just kind of amazing. The forest has become the perfect example of the flourishing community, what that looks like, whatever the context. So I've been really kind of reading about this. It's fascinating. It makes me wish I learned more about science, because I'm so fascinated by this research that's going on, this fungal mycelium beneath the forest floor. She was talking about it as a web of vitality that all the trees are connected to and linked in. It's just giving us a whole different idea about what helps things flourish. It's not survival of the fittest, it's flourishing of the most cooperative. Isn't that lovely? Flourishing of the most cooperative. Those are the communities, those are the systems that work best for the flourishing of all its members. Made me think of this scripture from Corinthians. This was from the Apostle Paul, of course, and he's writing letters to the earliest of Christians before they were called Christians. They were just following, they called it the way, and they were teachings that had been passed down verbally from Jesus of Nazareth. And these groups would gather, small communities anywhere, usually in secret because they were being persecuted under Roman oppression. But they were getting together and supporting one another, like a community anywhere. So he's writing to them. This is from 1 Corinthians 12. Now there are varieties of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are varieties of services and of activities, but it is the same God who activates all of them in everyone. To each is given the manifestation of the Spirit for the common good. Sounds like he's talking about a forest to me. I think he's talking about, we all have unique gifts. That Spirit of God, that Creator God flows through each of us in different ways.
and we're meant to use them and share them for all of our benefit. For all of our benefit, the whole forest. And I think that's just fascinating to think about. It's in our spiritual teachings, but we are still really working with this idea because that competitive thing has really been pushed in our culture too. One of her projects I found so fascinating, she's from British Columbia, and one of her, she kind of grew up in forest area among trees, and she and her team studied for a while this Douglas fir forest in British Columbia. Foresters called this an uneven aged forest, meaning they were big old trees with huge canopies, and there were little seedlings coming up also, so all kinds of ages, and it was a self-regenerating forest going on all the time. So they were doing research about these connections through the fungal network on the forest floor, and they estimated about 100 species of fungus in the forest. They decided to map one of them and track the connections. And they found that one species of fungus they were tracking was found in every tree in the forest. It was connected to every tree. So that one plant, and they said if we tracked all 100, imagine the interconnections. Every tree in the forest linked to every other one by this web of vitality under the surface. I think that's fascinating. The big mother trees, the big old trees, they call them mother trees. They get the most energy with their big canopies, so they get all this photosynthetic energy they send down into the network so that it feeds the seedlings coming up. They're the hubs of the network. They send along nitrogen and carbon and water to the other trees in the forest. They're not independent little trees competing for resources. They're all a part of the forest, making sure that the whole network is healthy so that everybody can flourish. She made this point, she said that the seedlings coming up, it answered a kind of question about how do they make it considering how dense the forest is. It was really a very shaded forest with these big trees. It's because they use the word subsidies, because of the subsidies of photosynthetic energy and water and nitrogen and carbon being fed to them by the bigger trees. There's this natural and generous give and take so that all in the forest can flourish. It seems to me this powerful lessons for us in how we flourish best too, because in the human forest, it's the same. We might think it's all me, I have to do it all myself, it's, struggle, work hard, compete with others, for the best resources. But no, what the kind of system, the kind of community that works best for us is the same, it's the same kind of thing. Our forests are kind of sprawling, loosely tethered things, it's walking around trees, but we're still all members of human community. We are still all part of the same forest, and for us too, it involves generous give and take, paying attention to where a little extra help is needed, sharing of resources. That's how we all do best, whether it's in a neighborhood, or a company, or an organization, or a family, or a church, or wherever, or a planet, or wherever it might be. It always works best if we're paying attention and sharing resources so that we all have what we need to not just survive, but flourish. Simard was talking about how cooperation is really our superpower. Our superpower. As we share our resources generously, we all thrive, and we're all connected in just the same way as the trees are. The world, Simard says, is an entwined place. An entwined place, interdependent. Most of us didn't learn that well from culture. Growing up, an awful lot of teachings about competition and individual achievement. That was always the emphasis. Maybe some of you got the same kind of teachings. I remember my mother would talk often about how important it was that somebody pull themselves up by their bootstraps. You ever hear that expression?
Oh, yeah.
What did it mean? I never did understand what that meant. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But I understood the spirit of the thing, which was, you do it yourself. You buck up and you do it. Whatever your challenges are, whatever you're missing, you buck up and you solve your problems and carry on. And not about expecting help from others. Not about the importance of sharing or helping one another along, which in many ways were helpful lessons to learn,
as we come up in life. We all need help at certain times in our lives, there's no doubt about it. We all get help. We all give help. We know this from experience. We might not have been taught it by our culture, but we've all experienced it in our personal lives, that we are part of the forest, that we are not truly alone, that there are big trees helping us, and we're sometimes the big trees, sharing nutrients, sharing nourishment and support with others. We know this superpower. We know it from our own experience. Simmer, who was writing this book about finding the mother tree, as she was doing that, she was also going through breast cancer treatment, and found herself connected with a forest of fellow women going through the same experience. They called themselves BFFs, but kind of retranslated as breastless friends forever. And 10 years later, she says they are still strong and steady friends for one another from having gone through that experience together and just standing by one another, like trees in the forest. I'm going to be there with you. I'm going to be there for you. We're going to be there for each other. That's how we get through tough times, isn't it? That's how we get through challenging circumstances, and we find ourselves finding the support group we need at the time, finding the community we need at the time, so that those resources that we need are going to be shared with us. It's not a go-it-alone proposition. It's not about going it alone. Don't try to do that. We get ourselves in trouble when we think it's all us, and we have to figure it all out all the way through our lives. That's too much to take on. And I think we all have experience of this at different times in our lives. Think of the different forests you've been a part of, that you have contributed, to the network, sharing your resources, and where you have gleaned a lot of resources. I was thinking in my grad school days at OSU, it was kind of vigorous sometimes, some of the hurdles they put you through, the oral exams and the theses you had to write, and all the other stuff. And it's a kind of a trial by fire sometimes, but you draw together as a community of support at a time like that, right? Some of the grad students who had been there a couple years longer, they had some wisdom to share with us about how to get through one particular seminar or how to deal with one particular professor or whatever it might be. That became kind of a way of standing together like a forest, sharing the resources so that you all can flourish. You're all going to get through, not just survive, but flourish. Have the resources you need. These form through churches a lot, would you agree? We find communities of support through churches. For years I had a group, we just called it a spiritual discussion group. We had all met in the church and were interested in doing some particular book study and so on. And we met in each other's homes every Sunday evening for about 4 years. And we were an uneven-aged forest. There were some old folks in it and some younger folks, and different gender, different racial backgrounds. We were a mixed forest, and during that period of time, it was a tremendously helpful time for me. I was in my early 30s, trying to get my feet under me. My parents had both died recently. I was very much alone, trying to figure out my way in terms of employment. My finances were in ruins. Various ways trying to get things together, and the support of that forest of friends. We prayed together, we supported one another in prayer, we meditated, we read books. It was a tremendously helpful time for me, a sharing of resources so that we all might flourish. We all took that with us. What are the big trees in your life? I just think it's so important, particularly in a cultural background where there's so much emphasis on individual achievement and ambition and competition. To make your way in life, I really think we need to remind ourselves, no, we also need to receive. We need to be able to receive. Joe and I were talking about, we both like Ram Dass and have been dipping in and out of Bob Ram Dass books over the years. And one of I think it was the first book I read by Ram Dass was called How Can I Help? And it was a book on service, really, and how to serve in the most effective way and not have your ego in the midst of it, But of course, Ram Dass over there, and he was a powerful speaker and teacher for decades until he had a stroke. And the last 20 years, he needed a lot of help with everything. And he joked at one of his books, that came out afterwards. He continued to work. He joked afterwards. He said, "If I were going to write that book again, it wouldn't be how can I help? It would be how can you help me?" Yeah, how can you help me? And he was able, fortunately with his spiritual maturity, he was able to adjust to such a significant change in his life. He had live-in help round the clock all the time because he was wheelchair bound and he needed help for everything every day, and he received it graciously. He received it, philosophically, and like, it's okay to receive help. Don't fight with that. Allow yourself to be able to receive just as you've been able to give. And in different stages of our life, it's the giving and taking is going on all the time. Haven't there in all our lives been times when we really needed to be on the receiving end? We really needed to kind of soak up some nourishment from those around us and some wisdom from those, some of those mother trees, some of those bigger, older trees that are around us. I've often been so grateful, particularly some of the older women friends I've had over the years. I've always had a lot of older women friends, 10, 20 years older than I, kind of mapping the course for me a little bit, sharing some wisdom with me about what to expect and how to deal with certain challenges, how to face the risks of life with courage and grace. So I think that's an important thing to remember. Have an awareness and a gratitude for the big trees in your life, in the past and right now, and be ready to receive from that, and also be ready to send back out into that network what you have to share. There are a variety of gifts, variety of services and activities that's the Spirit of God moving through all of us, and we're meant to share them generously, to give and receive them generously, and in this way, we will all flourish like the trees of the forest. We're not in it alone and unaided. We are in it together and connected, and our superpower is working together, is cooperation, is mutual blessing. Let's take that into a closing prayer, if we could, for just a moment, and affirm our understanding. We are deeply connected, every one of us. That power of God that is the source of us all, that we are deeply connected with, that flows through us. We are one with it, and we are one with one another. So we allow God to guide us moment by moment, day by day, to lead us in what's ours to give, and when it's time for us to receive, to open those doors of opportunity, to get those nutrients flowing among us. We trust God to guide us in that day by day, and we are grateful for that power and presence that is with us always. So it is. Amen. All right, well, we're going to have another song. Laura and Michael are going to do a song by Claudia Carawan called I Claim a Blessing.